Also, I will offer our opening prayer. Let's go before the Lord in prayer. Oh, yeah, thank you, Ramona. Thank you. Gracious God, ruler of the universe, we all stand convicted before you. We have not acknowledged you as Lord, as creator, as sovereign. We have each gone our own way, making gods of things we find in creation. Most commonly ourselves. We are truly sorry and we humbly repent. We know that you are sovereign, that you are the judge of the universe, that therein lies righteousness, that you are the sovereign, that you are good, and that you call us to be the same good that you are. We pray, Lord, that you will open our hearts to your sovereignty, that we may delight in your will and walk in your ways to the glory of your name and the lordship of Jesus Christ. Amen. Welcome. Look at you.
You have plastic?
No.
2000
or 19.
I
don't know.
We'll give you a bye.
Thank you.
Because you look so fly.
I appreciate it. Oh, I didn't even know.
So first, just a word of, what should I say, assurance and grace here. Today's passage, in my humble opinion, is the hardest passage in the book of Romans. Next week's not far behind it. But this is a hard passage, and we're not reading it the way that Paul really meant for us to read it, to encounter it, right? He wanted us all sitting around and Phoebe standing up there and she reads the whole letter and we all could go, Miss Phoebe, could you explain the part about, so that we would get it in context and we would be talking to somebody, able to engage with somebody who actually had probably participated in the writing of the book and who at the very least has been prepped by Paul. Good morning, Carol. Has been prepped by Paul about questions that people are likely to have. We are not reading it that way, so we are automatically at a disadvantage in that regard. Okay, but we're going to do the best we can, and remember too that we haven't made it through the whole book. We haven't read where the narrative arc is going, because there is a narrative arc here. So we're going to do our best. We're going to forgive ourselves when we're confused and frustrated. We're going to forgive Paul that he can't say everything instantly, right? That's a challenge with communication, you know. And let me just, and Kathy, I'm going to mute you because otherwise we can hear me on your computer. So, and Carol, you might want to adjust your camera. We have a lovely view of your forehead. Good morning. So let's start first by reminding ourselves, as we will do every week, of the overarching theme of the book, right? He lays that out for us. Paul lays that out for us in chapter 1, verses 16 and 17. So somebody read those two critical verses for us. If you're online and want to read it, feel free to unmute.
For I am not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God for salvation to everyone who has faith, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed through faith for faith, as it is written, the one who is righteous will live by faith.
Thank you. Good translation. Is that the NRSV?
Yes, and just a
That's good.
quickie, I'm muted, but if you'll just put your fingers on the space bar, it unmutes you while you have the space bar depressed. And
Oh, you you
Oh.
muted yourself.
I know, I was making a point.
And you were still
Oh,
talking.
use
That's cute.
use the
Wow.
space bar.
Yeah,
You can that
okay.
way you can just
Thank you.
unmute for just what you want to say.
Gotcha. Thank you, Carol. Kathy, excuse me.
No problem.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So let's remind ourselves of what some of these key words mean. The gospel. He says it is the power of God unto salvation, right? So remember, gospel means news, and specifically good news. It has a military overtone. And always in the Hebrew Bible, good tidings, good news is associated with God's redemption of the people. Christians are very, very quickly going to appropriate that word to refer to, well, to bring to multiple things that all are sort of tied together. One is to the act of proclamation, proclaiming. The other is the content of the message. And the other is the truth that underlies the message. So there's three things, and it's important to keep that in mind. The proclamation, the act of proclamation, the content of the proclamation, and the truth of the proclamation. All of those are part of that word. Salvation. Salvation from what? Yeah.
From our sinful nature.
Keep it in mind because this passage today answers that question. Salvation from what? And the righteousness of God. What did we say? What did we say the righteousness? What's the wrong preposition to use? Righteousness blank God. There was a wrong preposition to use, and it was very popular. It was very commonly thought to be the correct preposition. Righteousness blank God.
From.
From. Who said from? From. Good, Ruth. Righteousness from God. It is not, we're not here talking about what God conveys to us. We are talking about righteousness that is inherent to God's own self.
So what is the right?
Of.
Oh.
In fact, it might even in English be clearer simply to say God's righteousness. Because that word of can mean different things, different contexts, right? God's righteousness is revealed in the gospel. First to the Jew and also to the Greek. That phrase is going to be important throughout this book. And remember that the composition of the Roman church is what? Both? Right. And probably Jews who were the earliest members of the congregation, who were booted out of Rome by Nero, and who have now returned to Rome. We know that because Prisca and Aquila are mentioned at the end of the book as being there in the Roman church. They had been kicked out. We know from Corinthians, they had been kicked out, or along with all the Jews in Rome. And they were in Corinth. Well, now they're back in Rome. And we all know what happens with little groups within congregations, right? So,
Did you answer salvation?
yeah, we're gonna,
Oh,
we're gonna, yeah, we're gonna,
skipped it to
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, see below. And caveat, we talked about this last week, is Romans principally about us or about God? It's about God. And why is it easy to confuse that? Why is it easy to think it's about us?
Maybe the military, just like the commands, feels like.
Because the letter, that part.
Yeah, because God's righteousness has profound implications for us. And of course, righteousness refers to relationship, right relationship. And part of that is right relationship with us and God's establishment, reestablishment of right relationship with us, right? What is God's right relationship with humanity? So it's easy to bump that up to the top. And of course, we love to be the center of attention, right? Right. So, so beware that peril. And if you read older commentaries, and by older, I do mean like early 20th century and earlier, just beware that. Be on the lookout for that. All right. Now let's read what really is the summary verse of today's passage, which is Romans 1:18. Would somebody read that verse for us?
God is being revealed. God.
Thank you. Can y'all hear at home? Okay.
She's
Yeah.
saying no.
No, I just noticed the lights aren't on the microphones. Yeah, so I'll read that. So, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of men who by their wickedness suppress the truth. So what word opens 1:18?
Depending on your translation, NIV, that's four.
No, bad.
That's four.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, bad NIV, bad NIV. Yeah. 4. The first word is for.
Mine's the. Yes, mine is too.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
wrath.
Gotcha. That's wrong.
No.
The word is for
Why?
because it's there in the Greek. Because it's there in the Greek.
I mean, as far as interpretation.
So, well, how does verse 16 open?
I am.
For I am. How does verse 17 open? For in it the righteousness. And verse 18, for the wrath of
I
God.
translate for because. Is that
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yep.
yeah, it goes on 20.
Yeah.
Yep, for.
It's 21 and then, oh no, sorry, for since was 20, for although is 21. But other than that, that's all the fours I get. I have
So-
18, I don't
Yeah.
understand why they did that now.
So, well, there are reasons for that. We'll talk a little bit about that. So this is a great example of why everybody needs 2 translations in front of them. You need one that is oriented towards a literal translation, and you may also want one that's a sense translation. Because Paul constructed this deliberately that way. Rhetoric is so important to Paul. And when we go with a sense translation, we oftentimes lose a lot of his rhetorical technique. So he is deliberately inviting you to connect this verse 18 with what he's talking about in 16 and 17. There is a tremendous tendency to want to make this whole passage, chapter 118 all the way into 320, sort of a subtext, right? Who likes to talk about sin? Judgment? Nobody. Commentators like to set it aside. They like it to have the status of, well, it's just showing how bad things are to set us up for the good news of the gospel. But we really don't want to dwell on it. But it is integral to Paul's argument here. We like to say the gospel is the righteousness of God revealed. But Paul is saying the wrath of God is revealed. And that is integral to his righteousness. We don't like to hear that. We don't like to hear about judgment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And there are ways to talk about this appropriately and ways not to, right? Paul, I think, talks about it appropriately because he uses it to bring us to a different point. Is this how you would start out a letter to people you don't know?
If I'm mad.
Yeah. 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 So this is kind of surprising. And I think therefore we need to take it very seriously. Paul knows how to do rhetoric. He knows how to write a loving letter. He knows how to write a stern letter. He makes a deliberate choice here, which might to us feel surprising. But there are reasons that we can quickly imagine are why he does this. Precisely because he's writing to a church that he doesn't know personally, but who have heard about him. Let's look at Acts. Let's look at what might they have heard about him. In fact, what do we know they've heard about him? That. But that I'll say that's years ago. Right? More recently,
He's pointing a finger.
more recently, look at Acts chapter 21, verses 17 through 21. When Paul, had come to Jerusalem, so this is after he's written the book of Romans, right? The brethren received us gladly. Luke, the author of Acts, is with him. On the following day, Paul went in with us to James, the leader of the Jerusalem church, the brother of our Lord, and known to be an observant Jew. And all the elders were present. After greeting them, Paul related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God. And they said to him, well, you see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed? They are all zealous for the law, and they have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or observe the customs. What then is to be done? They think he's a libertine. They think, yeah, exactly. That he's a libertine. And remember too, think about the church in Corinth. Morally, how was the church in Corinth doing after Paul left it? Really bad. Sexual immorality, such as would be an embarrassment even to the pagans. And remember that Paul has detractors following him around, bad-mouthing him, trash talking. And they are probably harping on libertinism and failure to observe the law. We know that they're telling people you have to become Jewish to become Christian. So Paul wants to put that fire out right up front. This is Paul, essentially this is his version in this letter of, I am a Jew among Jews, a Jew above all other Jews. I'm a Pharisee among Pharisee. I am with respect to the law blameless. This is his version of that here. I am starting off right here, making it clear, I am not a libertine. I don't tell people that there's no judgment, that there are no behavioral expectations. I don't do that. So there's a rhetorical function here. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Having said that, rhetoric is not his primary concern here. The content is his primary concern. The righteousness of God, not of Paul, is his primary concern. What is the root cause of the wrath of God in 118? Yep, in verse 118.
ungodliness and wickedness of men.
And what is it that they do? What is it that defines their ungodliness and their wickedness?
Suppress the truth.
Suppress the truth. And what is the specific truth that they are suppressing? Somebody online, because we can hear y'all, read 21 through 23.
For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, or birds, or animals, or reptiles.
Thank you. And Ruth, if you would go ahead and read verse 25 as well.
Because they exchanged the truth of God, a truth about God, for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen.
Thank you. What's the root cause of God's wrath?
Distorting the truth.
Distorting the truth about who God is. What is this book about? The righteousness of God, which is the truth about who God is. Paul is showing himself here to be an absolutely spot on observant Jew, because what is the first commandment? Back in the 10 Commandments, back in the 10.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might, and your neighbor as yourself.
That is the heart and soul of the law. Yes. And you've got 3 examples there when Jesus is asked, and in fact, there's a scene where another rabbi is asked, what is the greatest commandment? And you've got a passage there from Mark, Matthew, and Luke that go over that very thing. What is the greatest commandment? If you look at the 10 commandments, which is the first one listed? Right, right. And our Jewish brothers and sisters actually push it back a verse. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. That is the first commandment. Who God is the first commandment. So if you're a good Jew and you take that seriously, right? What is the sin from which all other sins derive? Idolatry. Putting something else in the place of God. Right? Right? Yeah. Because whoever you put as God, that's the peg on which everything about you is going to hang. And if your peg is in the wrong place, everything else that hangs from it is going to be wrong. So was idolatry strictly a Gentile sin? No. Because I named this in this lesson, Judgment upon the Gentiles. And this is really, it's a Gentile-oriented passage. But it's not, idolatry is not exclusive to the Gentiles, right? We know that. We read in Isaiah that magnificent parody of idolatry that he does. And of course, he's writing to Jews, right? If you start in verse 9 of Isaiah 44, all who make idols are nothing, and the things they delight in do not profit. Their witnesses neither see nor know, that they may be put to shame. And he goes on with this magnificent parody of somebody who goes to all this trouble to shape the idol, hammer the idol, forge the idol, and then he prays to the idol to give him something. It's like, it's stupid. And he's writing to Jews who have embraced idolatry. In fact, remember that the prophets have 2 big beefs, right? Always, it's social justice and idolatry.
So what were some of the idols? Like trees and stuff? Or?
Yeah, and pagan gods. Right. And what are our idols now? We don't believe in pagan gods. What are yeah.
Celebrities.
Right. Well, yeah.
Beyonce.
Yeah. Our SUV, right? Americans and their big cars, you know?
But even
And it all was that self.
Yes,
Their bodies, our bodies.
yes. I am God. I decide how I'm gonna live my life. I decide who my identity is. I define my own morality. Hey, true for me, and that's true for you, right? Right? Ultimately, we all set ourselves up as our own idol. And we love to make God in our own image. Now, so, okay. What is this passage of God? What's those first few words in verse 18? Yeah,
God's wrath.
right. The wrath of God. Let me ask you, brothers and sisters, what are we saved from? The wrath of God. We don't like to hear this. After all, God is the sovereign of the universe. He made the rules.
I'd like to hear this.
Yeah.
The faith and the wrath of God.
That's-
the
yeah.
First word.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Now, the question is, what is the wrath of God? What do we mean when we say the wrath of God? And I put a couple of questions there. Is it impersonal? Just simply a natural consequence of sin? Paul would say no. It's the wrath of God. Is it simply an emotion? God's up there going, no. The Hebrew Bible gives us some clues. I will read for us. Zephaniah is right near the end of the Hebrew Bible. Zephaniah, Zechariah, Malachi. Zephaniah, we'll start with chapter 1, verse 18. Neither their silver nor their gold, he's talking about greedy people, shall be able to deliver them on the day of the wrath of the Lord, of Yahweh. In the fire of his jealous wrath, all the earth shall be consumed, for a full, yea, sudden end he will make of all the inhabitants of the earth. This is eschatological language. You're with me,
I don't know what
right?
that means.
Right? There you go. Right,
Speaking of
end times, exactly. And notice it's jealous wrath. It's wrath because we put somebody else or something else in relationship with us that's supposed to be our relationship with God. Remember, so often God uses the analogy of a marriage, and God's been cheated on. Right. Let's look at Zephaniah 2:10. This shall be their lot in return for their pride, because they scoffed and boasted against the people of the Lord of hosts, specifically their belief in God. And notice too that there is a vindication of God's people that is always a part of the Hebrew Bible's understanding of the wrath of God. Because they've been the witnesses. They've been the ones saying Yahweh is God. I want to read to you also, did I bring, did I bring Kesimon? No, I didn't. Did I not bring Kesimon? Yeah, I did. Here's Kesimon. I would be remiss if I never mentioned this book to you. Ernst Kesimon's Commentary on Romans came out in 1980, in German. That was the 4th edition. This is obviously the English translation. Arguably the most influential New Testament commentary of the 20th century. Ernst Kesimon's Commentary on Romans. I don't recommend that you read it because he assumes that you know Greek. If you're willing to deal with that, it's profound beyond words. For many students of the New Testament, including me, this is a life-changing book. he really redefined the conversation about Romans. And to this day, if you write on Romans, you have to deal with Kesamon. He offers a good example from a non-biblical but very popular Hebrew text immediately before the life of Christ called First Enoch on what is the wrath of God. In First Enoch, chapter 91, verse 7, it really comes close to this. If, however, sin, unrighteousness, blasphemy, and violence increase in all conduct, and backsliding, iniquity, and uncleanness grow, then there comes on all a great judgment from heaven, and the Lord comes forth with wrath and chastisement to hold judgment on the earth. The wrath of God is judgment for sin. And it demonstrates both the greatness and the goodness of God. He is sovereign, and he is good. He does not tolerate sin. But now what does it look like? Because Paul gives us a surprising spin on the wrath of God in today's passage. And I'm gonna throw a question out, and it's a yes or no question. I'm not inviting discussion here. Just yes or no, based on where you are right now in your thinking. Is immorality the cause? Actually, it's not a yes or no, it's cause or result. Those are your options.
Okay.
Is immorality the cause or the result of wrath?
The result.
The cause.
Okay,
Read it again.
okay.
I'm saying.
Is immorality, that's a very good answer. Immorality the cause or the result of wrath? Is immorality what invokes the
Yes.
wrath of God?
Right.
We're not going to discuss it. Just think about it for a minute. Just get that question in your head. Is immorality what causes the wrath of God?
Okay.
Or is it the result of the wrath of God? Yeah, it's a strange question.
It's very good.
Very true.
Simple. It's the
Let's see
cause.
what Paul says,
Very true.
because he's clear as a bell. No. Therefore, okay, so he's just talked about, he exchanged the glory of the immortal God in 23. We're in verse 23, chapter 1, verse 23.
Okay.
Exchange the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man or birds or animals or reptiles. They embraced idolatry.
Mhm.
They gave up on who God is. Therefore, remember, you always pay attention to that word.
Yeah, yeah.
That word and but. Those are two super important words to pay attention to as you read scripture. Therefore, because of the idolatry, God gave them up to the lusts of their heart, to impurity, to dishonoring their body among themselves. Look at 28. And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a base mind and to improper conduct. Idolatry came first.
That came second.
So and then more it's not being.
So idolatry is the cause.
Immorality came later. Immorality is
Is
the
the result.
result
Of
Oh, yeah.
of the wrath of God.
Got it.
immorality is the cause of the result of.
Yeah, because he.
We commit idolatry,
And then there's wrath.
and then there's wrath, and God turns us over to sin.
Sin.
Because we've said, God, you're not our God. Okay. Okay.
Okay, no discussion.
This is hard stuff.
Yeah.
Well, because
So.
But idolatry is the cause of the wrath.
cause
Right.
of God's wrath.
Got it.
And he
And the
turns us
result of the wrath
over
is sin.
to the sin that we've been wanting to participate in
Yeah,
anyway.
anyway.
Yeah. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
I got it.
You got it. Remember, which commandments which commandment in the 10 commandments comes first?
Have no
God,
other
God. God is first. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of bondage in the land of Egypt. And all the other sins, all the other commandments follow that. Which one comes first of the two greatest? Love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. If you mess up who is God in your life,
And conquer
the rest
adultery,
falls apart.
the neighbor stuff, all that.
That isn't even gonna come in the picture, okay?
The unforgivable sin was what we were taught at our little church. That was the one thing that God could not tolerate is just ignore, well,
Right.
just
Turning
turning from him.
from him. Okay, you've made your choice. You don't want me to be your God. Right? So now as we, here are a couple of comments on this passage to think about, that we can, you are what you worship. Right? If you worship money, yeah, go read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol and see what that looks like.
I hope you have
Right?
a lot of-
If you worship sex, if you worship popularity, if you worship your clothes, if you worship your job, your life is going to reflect that. And it's not, yes, there is a certain natural consequence to that, but Paul is saying this is evidence of the sovereignty of God. God just turns you over. Okay, you want that to be your idol. Okay. Think about Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the first one who hardened his heart. And all that list. Okay, want to harden your heart? Fine. I'll help you. Right? This is from Kezemon. Immorality is the punishment, not the guilt. Men have to endure what they wanted to attain. Being their own God. That's ugly. So now, just when, he gives us this list, right? That amazing list of all these horrible things. Envy, murder, sexual immorality, strife, deceit, malignity, blah, blah, blah. The temptation, if you're a good, upright person, is to say what?
I'm better than they are.
I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
So where does Paul turn his attention next in chapter 2? To judgmental people, right? If you just skim over those next like 12 verses, the word judge and judgment is going to pop out at you.
Can I just ask a
yeah.
question?
Yes.
I know it was a yes or no. I totally got it wrong.
Yeah, most people
Because
do.
This is very eye-opening, but I just have to understand, thinking this through. Is this speaking? I can totally instinctively understand it when it's applied to all of mankind. But on an individual basis, is this saying that everyone that's immoral has not loved God first? I mean, maybe I'm looking at it backwards. I don't
No,
know.
you're not. You're not. What you're doing is exactly what Paul has pulled you into. Paul has pulled you into thinking of people who are immoral. But then
Including
Paul,
myself, we all are.
right, we all are, exactly, we all are. That's why Paul then turns his attention to judging others for their sins. Because how is judgmentalism itself a form of idolatry?
When you think you're God, you're judging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's putting your own self up as the judge of the
Uh-huh.
universe. So he gets through this. They ain't nobody still standing when he's done. That's another reason why it's easy to think that this is about us.
Yeah.
It's about God is sovereign.
So I thought we were born with the heart of iniquity. And like, not like, we just grew up and chose to be evil.
Every baby is born with a great grasp reflex. Mine.
Right.
Mine. Yeah.
Could
There's a
you
reason
all
we call-
repeat that? I could not hear
Sure,
what he
sorry.
was saying.
Sure. He's Cedric said he thought we were born with iniquity, right? We're born broken, right? And then say what you said again. Help me remember that.
No, you said
Yeah.
that, yeah, everybody was born with the grass.
Right, but you said, oh, you said we choose to be it.
Just like we didn't just grow up.
Yeah.
I was saying like we were born in iniquity. I didn't feel like we just grew up to choose to have these traits where we wanted to have idols and we wanted, like, it's like, we don't consciously choose those things. I didn't think.
We don't consciously choose it,
Right,
but that doesn't mean we
but it's not there.
don't choose it. Right? And it doesn't mean it's not at the core of how we view the world. I mean, think about it. All of us by definition see the world with us at the center of it. Right? Quickly. The last couple of things he turns to, in chapter 2, verse 6, he has been talking about knowledge of God, right? That the Gentiles have a natural knowledge of God, right? In chapter 1. And the sort of assumption would be Jews know God because God revealed him. But then he says in chapter 2, verse 6, is it knowing God that saves you? He's going to render to everyone according to his works. And how's that going to look for us? For everybody? Bad.
Oh, yeah.
Bad. It's going to look bad. And he goes on to talk about, those who live under the law are going to be judged under the law. Those who lived without the law, the Greeks, the pagans, you're going to be judged. This is just me, personal commentary. I fully believe that every single one of this, God will pull up, okay, you thought that it was bad to do this. Let's see, January 22nd, 1984. Yeah, you did that then, you did that the next day, you did that the next day. Let's see, here's something else you said was absolutely wrong. Oh, yeah, you did that every day from 1972 to 2000 and the day you died, right? I fully believe we're all going to be held accountable to our own standard and found wanting. I fully believe that.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
God's going to say, well, this is what you call
that's what you
God,
call.
and oh, by the way, yeah, you broke all my laws too. Yeah. To whom does this standard apply? Everybody's going to be judged by what you did. Look at chapter 2, verses 9 through 12. There will be tribulation and distress for who?
For every human being who does evil.
Chapter 2, verse 9. To the who first?
But first for the Jew, then for the Gentile.
Right. Everybody. There's no getting away from this. I don't care if you have the law, you don't have the law. You're going to be judged, dudes. Because God in verse 11, what does God not do?
Favoritism.
No favoritism, no partiality. Because God is righteous. God is in right relationship to sinful humanity, whether you're Jewish or whether you're pagan. And we're not going to finish this question. We're just going to remind ourselves of this question. how does all of this show the righteousness, the right relationship of God?
Chapter 3, like as you.
Yeah, hold on to it, right? Because it's time to go to church, right? Keep that question in your mind. How does all of this show the righteousness of God? Take hope. This is the hardest passage in the book. And it's hard. Very hard. Feel free to email questions, confusions, comments. And we will continue God's righteousness revealed in wrath, part 2, next week. And there he will focus on the Jews. All righty, everybody. I hope you do not lose power if we get ice, that everybody stays safe and all that. Tuesday,
Tuesday.
yeah,
And Tuesday nights.
yeah, maybe. We don't know. They don't know
They
yet,
don't
but
really know.
yeah, we shall see. We shall see. So the sovereignty of God may be sure, but the weather is anybody's guess.
Mary Elizabeth, on a
Yes, ma'am.
different note, are there any, now I know there's so many people asking for money in LA, and thank you, Tricia. I got back in touch with Samaritan's Purse, we're good on that. But for the animals and all, are you aware or who you?
Yeah, so actually there is a veterinary clinic that I spoke to this past week, and I'm going to give them a shout out. Pasternak Animal Hospital. They're in Pasternak, Pasternak. That's the last name of the
Oh, the
owner.
vet.
And that family, they all work there. They lost their home.
Mm.
The clinic is still standing. They have refused to close even for a day. They are taking in animals that are displaced. They're living in the office.
Oh.
And they are accepting donations. And I actually talked to Mrs. Pasternak Tuesday, maybe. And she was like, so many people have called and they're bringing food and, you know, things because people are showing up saying, I need stuff for my animals. I'm sure that they would welcome any help, and they may also be able to direct us to local organizations. I know ASPCA has, the National ASPCA has made a commitment of $1 million, which is great, but it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah. You always wonder with them, and then especially like the National Humane Society or whatever that one's called.
Right.
You know, they don't have a very good record in terms of the amount, because of all their ads and stuff, the amount of what
Right,
actually goes
right.
to the.
They have pledged $1 million to relief there in LA. And of course there are, I'll do some poking around and see.
Oh, okay.
And I know that I'm sure the California Veterinary Medical Association is accepting donations. The CVMA. But yeah, I'll send you something, and I'll just send it to everybody in case anybody.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that, Charlene.
Well,
But
thank
yeah,
you.
Ms.
Thank you.
Pasternak was lovely, and
How'd you find out about them?
so there was a news article. We get veterinarians who are members of the American Veterinary Medical Association. We get a little news brief a few times a week, and it's a service that just trawls all of the news services looking for articles that would be of interest to us. They're not necessarily scientific. Sometimes they're human interest, sometimes whatever,
Right.
but would be of interest to veterinarians. And the LA News, one of their TV news broadcasters had broadcast a story about them. And that was in the smart brief.
Okay, so
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
And did you see the one yesterday about the dog in Turkey? The mother
Yeah,
dog?
I said, yes, I sent you that. Did I send you that?
Well, it was
Oh,
on
no.
TV.
Oh, yeah, the one that brought her puppy to the vet. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was in our news
Does
brief.
that news brief?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
a mother dog in Turkey carried her dog to
Her
a veterinary
baby.
clinic.
And
the
then
dog-
she
her
stayed
puppy
there
was
while they were
almost
working
dead.
on it. And
Yeah.
she kept jumping up to check on it and,
Yeah,
but she carried it in her mouth.
yeah. And
And
somehow
I-
they got the other two puppies and they're all staying there at the clinic and everybody's doing well and yeah. And it's interesting because Turkey is known for loving cats, not so much dogs.
Huh,
So this was really darling that she knew where to go for help.
yeah. How do you, and then you say, oh, again, how smart animals are that,
Yeah. Yeah. They got it on video of her walking up with the puppy in her mouth.
yeah, yeah. That's where I saw it was on TV on Fox.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you. I don't want to make
Sure
you
enough.
late. Thank you so
Oh.
much. Thank you for
Thank
your.
y'all. Have a great week.
Yeah,
Everyone.
Bye.
great lesson.
It was a
So
great.
glad, so glad.
A great lesson.
I'll be watching it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear ya. It's tough stuff. It is.